Call to order.
This is the regular meeting of January 13, 2014 of the Election Commission. Roll call. Gwen Matthew.
Present.
Bonnie Lynn Babb.
Excused.
Sue Kenny. Sue,
Say it again.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of interference here. I don't know what the problem is.
Probably me moving the phone. I was trying to get you closer.
Oh, okay. Am I closer?
Not much, but a little.
Okay.
Vicky.
Here.
Petey. Here. Joyce. All right.
And also present Barbara Jones, Municipal Clerk.
Amanda Moser, Deputy Municipal Clerk.
Dennis Freeland, Municipal Attorney.
And would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Barbara Colonel. Actually, Joyce told me about the meeting.
Okay.
Eugene Haberman.
Okay. There is. Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah. All right, so we are at the old business on your agenda, and I don't think you have any old business.
I don't think we do
Okay.
either.
And so you're to your new business.
To the
Madam
new
Chair.
business.
Yes.
Okay, so we are discussing the review of the Observer's Handbook today. I have a question that I would like to ask to start with, Barbara. So, because it would, to me, it influences the rest of the changes. On the last of my notes, there is a set of codes from the state. Okay, let's see. Dennis mentioned at our meeting that he hurriedly used the state handbook as its template. Barbara and Amanda at another time indicated they would like to see us change our procedures to be more in line with the state's. It was also mentioned at one point that the scope of this commission was changing, different wording, but I would like that particular point addressed. Are you, and I don't know how to ask this question, so maybe, are you attempting to get our procedures down in code as well as the responsibilities and rules for the observers?
Well, originally we had put in some of that with the notion that it would give observers and poll watchers some concept of what it is you do, so that they could read that, understand it. They wouldn't be pestering the clerk's office or you with lots of questions. What are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? But then when there was some concern about the size of the document and timing, we decided to simplify this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that we took, I think, most of that out. What you're left with should primarily be focused on what our expectations of the observers and watchers are.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is because anytime you have rules that apply to something external to the municipality, whether it's people who come in for permits, people who pay their taxes, whatever it is, those things are required to be written down and approved by the Assembly as regulations. From the state level, the state adopts departments can adopt regulations, and they have their own little notification and hearing process. It doesn't involve the state legislature, but in our code, it says departments like the clerk's office can adopt regulations, but in
Mhm.
fact they're not actually effective unless formally approved by the Assembly. So if we're going to make observers do something or not do something, they have a right to expect that it's in a written format approved by the Assembly. So what you often see is handbooks like this incorporated by reference through regulations, or in our case incorporated by reference through code, which is so that's what we're trying to do, is set the ground rules in place. Because otherwise, in theory, people who are subject to these rules could say, well, those rules don't really apply to me. They were never approved by the Assembly. So that's something we're trying to avoid.
I see. But you mentioned, we're looking at big changes. I mean, changing the date or changing the procedure, whether it's a mail-in vote or a. So I think you're probably looking ahead, at least, But are you assuming we're going to adopt those kind of procedures this year in our,
Okay.
just that kind of stuff.
I'm gonna make it, that was a multiple.
Sorry.
multi-questions.
I don't know how to
So
ask 'em.
You said changing the date, mail-in elections, and then you asked your question, so I'm not sure what the question is.
Really, my question is, are we going to change our procedures this year from, that we had certain procedures last year, but some of the things in the state code, in the state handbook, is quite different than what we do. Is it your intention that we go over to more of the state procedures?
Well, I think it's a multi-part, there's multiple issues there. So, let me answer it in a couple of ways. Number one, I don't think that just because the state does it, we have to do it that way.
Mhm.
What I do think, and what I think Dennis has done, and what Amanda and I tried to do, was look at state law, look at the state process, look at our process. Does their process work? Does it make sense? Is their language better? If so, let's change ours, right?
Okay.
So only if we thought it made sense or it was better than what we were doing would we change it. There are some things we have left absolutely the same because we actually think our processes are better. But then there's another step. So that's one answer. And I think that answer is basically
That's-
no. I'm
okay.
not trying to make us look identical to state. But let's look at the codes. And I know the codes are an issue. Unfortunately, it's the state's database. So yes, the codes are going to change. And Amanda's probably can talk to you a little bit more about that. If the state's database uses these codes, we discovered it last year. Do you remember when we were using, you remember this, we were using PU, right? Was it PU for purged? Or that was the year before.
Yeah, I don't remember.
What was the code that we were using and we weren't?
And we found out it was different than what we thought.
Exactly. And so this exercise has led us to some of those issues, and we need to fix them. And so I think Amanda can talk a little bit more about that.
No, I just, in agreement with what you said, I do understand that your codes sort of do just sort of make a little bit more sense, but in just pulling us more in line and having the state be able to understand. And, this is something that happens a lot, and the Election Commission brings this election forward to be certified, and then we submit all the information to the state, and then I spend a couple weeks after we submit our data going back through with the state and reviewing voters that have been votes not counted and sort of crawling back through that data. And I think it would be a lot more helpful for them if they knew exactly what happened on that end, because we've made a lot of mistakes that I've discovered in this process after we've already submitted it. And so I think it'll just help us help ourselves. Like, they'll be
Okay.
able to see what we did, where we went, why we made that decision, and exactly what decision we made. And then, and just the idea of continuous improvement.
For clarification, when you say codes, you mean our reject or accept codes?
Yeah, because
not
we
the
send
code.
we send all that information to the state, so they.
And so I'll just give you the one example that we actually discovered in the 2012 election. So it wasn't last year's election. But in 2012, there were some envelopes, because they were question ballot envelopes, that were, when we went on the database, on REMS, the commission did, the code was PU for purged.
Oh yeah.
So those votes did not count in the 2012 election. We did not process those. Well, then what we found out that happened was purged, I mean, I think the common sense meaning of purged is that you are no longer in the database. It's you're out, purged. But that's not what it means to the state. It means that you're in the process of being made inactive, but you're not inactive or not ineligible.
Well, both inactive and purged, you can still vote. It's the state has gone through and said that you're no longer an active voter, but if you come in and attempt to vote again, they reactivate you. So on our end, we shouldn't not count those
Really?
votes.
And we didn't
Even
know
if it's
that.
inactive.
Even if it's inactive or purged.
Exactly, even if it's
Mm.
inactive or purged. So that's why we do need to look at what the state is doing, and we need to follow that process. You can see how important that part of this process is, and becoming more like the state. And I think it really eliminates, like Amanda said, a lot of the work on the back end. So I found out about this purged issue in July.
And this purge issue from 2012 actually became a huge issue because the State Division of Elections had told the voter, just go vote in the municipal election. It will reactivate your status. But their vote did not count because at the time, the Election Commission, that was the decision that was made. And then the person attempted to vote in a state election again in the primary, and then had more problems because it didn't reactivate their vote because
Interesting.
So that was how many people were, that
Well,
was
the-
one person or?
that particular incident was one person because that person called the state who then called us, and I was here in the office in 2012 and they explained the whole situation to me. I do think that there was more than one voter that year with that status that was not counted, but I don't remember the exact number.
So that's two answers to your questions. So, but basically, so really it's, no, we don't need to be identical to the state. We need to look at what they're doing and take the best of what they've got and adopt it to our uses. But two, if we're using the state's database, we need to be identical. Because that is, really gonna be the best for the voters. It's gonna be the best for the commission. It's gonna be the best for the clerk's office, best for the Division of Elections. So yes, it's gonna be a hurdle this year. It's gonna be
Okay.
a tough year this year because we're gonna change codes, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And you have it for months before the election starts.
So we can memorize
I
that.
think that that's an important thing. And
I'll bring
this is-
flashcards.
This was the idea when we started this in May, was that we would finish this with time before we got started, and we got pushed back by a couple timelines. And
Well, I
then-
can see a big chart now with the new codes. So,
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's a
Yeah.
great idea, Joyce. A new
Gwen.
chart is a great idea. We'll get a whiteboard up
Yes.
there.
Okay, then. Amanda, is it possible, should we call Joyce to see if she's on her way? She had some concerns. Should we?
We can do that, definitely. I have hers all captured here. We can read through them more,
Okay.
We can start with whoever's next on the list. It looks like it's Vicky's next and come back to Joyce's.
Okay,
It seems like we can probably try and get through the rest of this.
sounds good.
And maybe she'll be here by then.
Vicky had some general suggestions that preceded my actual word for word. So I would like to, I'm just like,
Oh, okay.
I need clarification like Gwen did on some of these things.
I need a copy, the public needs a copy. Thank you.
Do you want a copy, man?
If you have one, yeah. Thank you. Oops.
Let's put one over at Joyce's.
Okay, yeah. See, does Vicky have one? Yeah. Okay. Well, we've talked a little bit about the state, and the state in there, whatever was given to us in the handbook, which I need an explanation. What does that mean? Handbook. You used it again.
This is the handbook.
Yeah, I know what it is, or but what is its function?
Okay, so its function is twofold. One, to teach the observers and watchers about what it is that the clerk's office and the commission do during an election. We've skinnied that down some. And two, it sets the ground rules for how the observers and watchers can behave, what our expectations of them are, what they need to do to become observers and watchers, and then what they're allowed to see and do during the process.
I have no problem with that. I think that's a good idea, except, and it will go in code by reference only as a regulation perhaps.
Right. Incorporated by reference.
Yeah, okay.
It won't be a regulation.
It won't be.
Well,
It-
it is, actually.
Is it gonna go under the regulations
It-
in
No, but
28?
it's still a regulation. It's just not
Because it's-
codified.
okay,
It's
got
just
it,
in the-
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
What does that mean? What you just said?
Okay, let's see how I can explain this.
Two lawyers over there, I know you got it, but
All
I
right,
don't know.
So some laws you quote unquote codify, you give them section numbers and you publish them in books, and some laws are passed and they're not put in the code like this. You know, budget bills aren't codified, but they're law, they say what you can spend and how you can
Mhm.
spend. So this one is incorporated by reference so that you don't put all of this, you don't codify all of this material into this code somewhere. You actually just have these official handbooks available to people.
Okay.
I don't know if you hunt or fish, but the book, the hunting regulations book, is sort of the same sort of concept. You don't find that book published inside the state statutes or inside the regs per se, but it's still a regulation.
Okay, if that needs to be updated, do you need to go back to the assembly?
Yes.
And, okay,
Yes.
okay.
So it is law, even it's a handbook, and it's only in the code by reference, but it is law.
Correct. That's the only way you can hold the observers and the watchers accountable. So that's something that you can say is the law, they have to obey.
Should we call it observer regulations rather than handbook?
Well, regulations imply that it's codified and published somewhere inside of the code of regulations,
Okay.
and it's not going, so that'd
Okay.
be confusing.
Yeah,
Right.
that's, I'm trying to straighten this out for my head.
Yeah.
Right, so there is a section in the code, and there are some AMCRs. This is AMC, Anchorage Municipal Code, but AMCR would be Anchorage Municipal Code of Regulations, and this is not that. And that's why we don't wanna call it
Okay.
regulations.
Okay. And this one, you guys are gonna get tired of me talking about it, but when we use the word ballot, can't do that.
I'm not tired of that at all. Thank you for pointing it out.
I mean, it jars me every time because nobody sees the ballot until it's opened and goes into a card reader or something.
Right.
You know, so when we say review the ballot, hey, oh, hello, we're not doing that. And I don't know what we can call these envelopes that we get the information from, you know, for an easy word. because
That's the right word. It's
Envelope.
absolutely your
The
question
envelope.
about an envelope. You're
Okay.
correct.
All right.
So do you have specific ones that we are writing down, that we are changing right now?
I
I mean,
changed
someone
the-
you're
Just
such
every
a
time
sharp
you
eye
see
for
it.
that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it jars me.
So do
I've
we
got
need
it
to go
all
this-
over here? Here we
alrighty.
go. I don't know, are we gonna do a word by word revision of this election, this handbook?
Well, probably on the ones like that, if I just know I just need to check those, I can do that.
Okay,
On the others that require some discussion, we may need to pick those up one by
okay, well,
one.
here's a discussion one. Page 5 of the handbook. Is this all right? Should I
Yes,
go
please.
ahead? Political party group observers,
Mhm.
paragraph.
Mhm.
It says, the observers are to be selected by the state party chair or district chair. That is not applicable in the muni elections. We don't have parties in municipal elections.
Why did I keep this here?
Is it under which one? Is this the observer's guide or
Yeah,
the?
yeah. My
Well-
thought was that while the elections are non-partisan, in other words, you don't advertise yourself as a Republican or Democrat while you're running, that doesn't mean that a political party cannot have observers.
Right, I
Right.
gotta understand that.
So, maybe this says it too strongly, but
My mouth
maybe we.
flew open on that.
I guess the question is if somebody comes to you, say, it says, well, I'm the observer for such a political party, and then somebody else comes in and says, well, I'm a such and such observer for the party. How do we verify they get one? And maybe, my expectation was that the party chair or the district chair would be the person that we go to, because we require an authorized person to identify who the observers and watchers are. So the candidate is authorized to identify who his or her observers are.
I'm partial to the idea that community elections are nonpartisan, so the word of a state or district chair kind of shocks me, but I can live with it.
Yeah, I know from Juneau, which is also nonpartisan, maybe it was the Matt Supero, they just don't reference the political groups at all.
Okay, so what we could do
with political
is,
parties.
if we treat a political party as just any other organization or organized group,
Mhm.
we would take this section out,
Mhm.
and they would default down to the paragraph below.
Mhm.
I
They-
like that.
And I'm
I like
fine
that
with that. I
better
didn't mean to
too.
create any confusion by that. I was.
Great.
Now, so Dennis, if you go through this and when you find the word ballot, you'll do search and replace with this absentee
envelope.
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 Like even, like this heading, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I have that, I say correct title. That's what I got in my notes.
So,
It's not a ballot
so it's
review.
envelope review, right?
Yeah. You could put voter information review maybe is appropriate.
Or voter eligibility review or something like
That's
that.
what we're,
Hello.
we're seeing if they're a qualified voter. That's what we're doing, right?
Yes.
I originally thought that, but it's 2, it was changed.
Oh, I didn't realize it was changed till 2. I apologize. I thought it was 2:30.
Let the record show, Joyce is here.
And I think that this is one of those times that more words is probably fine, and if it says ballot, and it should be absentee or question ballot envelope, that it's okay to have all of those words there. If that's what it means, then we need all of those words. We don't need to shorten it to envelope, because some people might not understand what envelope. It could be a manila envelope.
Okay.
So it's okay here, I think, to say all of the words.
So what would all of the words be?
As Vicki has absentee or question ballot envelope. If we're talking about just question, then it could say question ballot envelope. If we're talking about just absentee, it can say absentee ballot envelope. But I don't think it's better to just say envelope, because people outside of us won't understand what that means.
Well, that's the point of this ballot review, because any observer, a novice, so to speak, will say, they're looking at my ballot.
Right.
That won't work.
Joyce, I'd like to bring you up to speed. We talked a little bit. We are trying to bring us into, we're trying to come up with the best possible procedures. If the state does that, then we're trying to go into the state. But if we have a better process, we have a better process. The codes at the end, Barbara and Amanda discussed that they review for 2 weeks after the election. They go through with the state the codes, and they're different codes. And we've gotten into some trouble that we misunderstood what some of those were. So we're bringing them so that we could talk apples to apples and orange to orange. So they convinced me that even though, but we're going to have a big chart to,
Well, that makes
to learn them.
Definitely.
Some guides and stuff.
yeah.
You can print them on break.
And then, Mr. Wheeler, if you could bring Joyce, because I know several of her questions were regarding the handbook being referenced to this. If you could just briefly
Again, I
recap it for us.
apologize. I really thought it was 2:30.
Even in terms of our open conversation about
Yes.
this? All right, so in the past, we haven't had, to my knowledge, observers or poll watchers to the degree we have most recently. So we needed some way to manage them and let's set the rules. So what we did back last April was borrow the state's guides for watchers and observers. And then moving forward, to really make that work, we need to adopt these things as official rules. So they are a form of regulation. And under a local system, a regulation has to be approved by the assembly to be effective. So if we're going to tell the observers and watchers, you have to follow these rules. If you don't, you get removed from the room, from the polling place, whatever it might be. We need to have the assembly formally adopt these, and we're doing that through this vehicle of incorporating the guide, whatever it is we agree on as the final guide, by reference through the code. At the state level, departments can adopt regulations. They don't have to go to the state legislature to do that. But at the local level, departments like the clerk's office, if they do adopt what would be regulations, they're not effective until the assembly approves them. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Also, he was saying that the procedures that are in there of ours is an effort to educate the observers and poll watchers as to what to expect us to do. And it's
Right.
abbreviated.
We've now
It's-
skinny that down.
Yeah.
The first draft of this had a lot of that stuff in there, and the idea was to not have observers and poll watchers pester you, the clerk's office, or election officials. So by describing what your internal processes are for them, they would have a handy guide. Oh, that's what they're doing. It wasn't meant to create new processes for you. It was really just to educate them. But we've skinny that down to focus solely on what we expect out of the observers and watchers at this point.
I think that would help the clerk. Would have fewer questions from that group.
Well, it may be based on what you've said here about some talk about internal processes, and what you're calling an election commission guide. That could be, whenever that's revised or however that's used, that can be handed out to anybody. That can be something that observers and watchers receive.
I'm saying I think it will be positive.
Yeah.
And when we finish all this stuff, the clerk's office will put this on the web and make it available to the public so that people leading up to the election understand
Well,
the
that's
requirements.
wonderful.
And I think that would be really helpful based on what happened last year. If people knew beforehand instead of trying to play the catch up that we did.
I remember that was, year before last, that was one of our recommendations, is that there be more public education as to what goes on with all this, because they don't realize the process or a lot of things. Vicki also addressed changing it to envelope where it says ballot throughout the document, and you have a
Yeah,
search and
I
something.
was thinking about speaking in terms of voter eligibility.
What page?
Well, anytime that we have like on page 7 here, we have ballot challenges, responsive ballot challenges. They're not so much, the vernacular has always been challenge ballots. I mean, but even at the state level, that's not really what they meant. They really meant voter eligibility,
Yeah.
right? They weren't trying to say you voted for the wrong person. They were trying to say you weren't eligible to vote. So, I just used the common vernacular, but we can certainly clean that up.
Awesome.
And I agree with that because it was very confusing reading this where it kept saying ballot.
Right.
And we really weren't looking at the ballot.
Right.
We were looking at the envelope with the voter ID on it.
Mhm.
Voter identification.
Okay.
So on page 7, shouldn't that be changed then to voter eligibility challenges?
That's how I marked mine up. To
Okay.
do that kind of change.
I really like that.
So that's a really good example of what we were talking about at the beginning, Gwen, when we said that we're looking at the state process, but if the state process or the state term doesn't work, we're gonna use what makes sense. We're gonna make it better. And that's what you just did by using voter eligibility challenges. That's a good
Excellent.
example.
Okay.
Excellent.
And it's not that we're better than the state, but of course we are. But it's that it's more applicable to our election, which is somewhat different.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have more that you wanted?
Oh, the last one, and I will be quiet thereafter. I'd like to have, when we have something like this, I like to have page line numbers and page dates. Kind of like what the Assembly does for their
Yes.
ordinances.
Right.
It makes it so
You
much
want the line
easier.
numbering on the whole
Yeah.
on every page.
Mhm. That's
You want a
real
date
simple.
on every page, revision date on the header. I can do that too.
Well,
That's easy.
just so that when we have 2 of these things and we get
We
2
know
or
which
3
one
of
we're
them,
talking about.
we can toss one.
It's a very good idea to put the date on.
Yes.
I like that.
And a footer, does it for you.
Right.
Yep, that's
Header,
not a
footer,
problem.
whatever.
Thank you. I'll be
All righty.
And I think all my suggestions probably go along with what Joyce had, I don't think,
There was correct page numbers and table of contents?
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Yeah.
we do that.
Yes. I would have never caught that except I was looking to see what was on that page and then I went there and it wasn't that page.
So do we have the correct ones? Do you
Well-
have that, or do we?
Well, I'll,
you
when
have
You'll
we're
it?
have to
done with
read-
edits,
yeah,
I'll
we'll-
put in the edits and I'll go back and fix the table of contents, so that.
Okay.
Okay.
And then under the table of contents, the headings of certain sections are going to change then
Yeah.
too if we,
Yeah.
okay.
They'll
So page
correspond.
numbers in the section headings would change, okay. Sometimes I forget to do that when I'm redoing stuff, so I'm just making
Yeah,
a
no, I
point.
appreciate that.
Very
That's
easy
good.
to forget that.
Okay, Joyce, would you like to go through your concerns? Or who wants to be next, Joyce or Petey?
Well, mine's pretty simple.
Okay, let's do it.
If you want to do mine next. My question, and I can't remember, page 5, where it said there would be one observer for each table. I thought that's a lot of people.
Mhm.
Could be.
I think we all
My-
addressed that one.
My anticipation is that it won't be as bad as it could be, like it sounds. I mean, last time it was just the 2 candidates, right? What you could, I suppose, do here is figure out whether there's an opportunity for the various candidates or the various people on sides of issues to agree to have some person be their observer. So you don't have 10 observers at a table, maybe you have 2.
Now, Dennis,
But
maybe not, maybe there wouldn't be observers, but there might be. The first room we start out is from about that post right there to here. We have 3 racks, 1 conference table, and 4 small ones.
Yeah, computer tables.
So how you
Not
count the
really.
tables,
I'm sorry,
Is-
which room are we talking about?
The one across
150.
from the assembly room.
the
where
one
they
across
meet
from
the-
155.
What were we
Yeah.
doing in there?
160,
We
that
were
one,
separating
conference
those.
room.
Oh, okay.
We started separating the mail-in stuff in there before the election. And then after the election, day or so, we move into bigger quarters.
We need more room. I've told Mr. Trumbull that, but he didn't quite hear
I
me.
mean, the problem is you have to accommodate their right to observe somehow.
I know, so we need a
So-
bigger room.
You need a bigger room, or you need the TV closed circuit cameras with the big screen and the big,
Right,
different
right.
room,
Oh, dear.
right? Or they have to be able to proxy so that, if you and I and you all want to be observers, we're kind of all on the same side. We could say, okay, you're going to be the proxy for us. Go
Mhm.
represent our interests and go observe. So we're not all around the table.
But in room 150, even that would be impossible. I think one more person in that room would be impossible. We tripped over each other as it was.
Right?
So I would say, unfortunately, you're going to have to do it in a different room if you can't accommodate the observers.
There is, the next room would be like, we could take over the mayor's conference room. We could use that space.
Yeah,
But
whatever.
then it would no longer,
But,
we'd have to move everything up and down.
but I'm just letting you know that we're desperate for space. So I do have a question for you. Is this something that, is there some way that instead of saying that each of the above will be allowed to assign one observer per table, is there some way that we could say, because if we did have electronics or technology, we could limit that. We wouldn't need to have one observer per table if we did have technology, right?
Yeah, like I said, we could add some proxy language or technology.
And then that way, it gives us the option, if, I don't think people were particularly interested in observing at that initial process in the conference room at the ombudsman's office. They were more interested when you were starting, rather than just the organizing, but when you were starting to do the reject and stuff. So if we could use technology in the early stage like this, and if we had to run out and get some, video cameras set up with remote feeds, that would make more sense to have that done if someone needed to watch that process than trying to add another person in that room, because it's true, there wouldn't have been room for another person.
I'm not sure if that will work, and just because I think that the information the observers wanna see is directly on the envelope, and we probably don't wanna film that because it's gonna expose confidential information too.
That's true.
I mean, that's just my concern. I mean, we just need more space.
I do agree with you. I don't think the mail-in votes are that much of a concern until after the election, if anything.
But
you know.
that room was really too small for us even.
And that's something that I recognize, and, I mean,
We made it work, but, yeah.
So the best I can do for you now is to give some flexibility so that there's either one observer for each candidate, or they can use proxies or technology.
I think
None
that's
of
probably
those
the
three
best thing
things
we can do.
work, then you're gonna have to find a bigger space.
Okay.
Well, and before we had elections in Egan Center, why couldn't we use the
Yeah.
Denina Center?
Sue?
Yes.
I think it all becomes a question of cost and security.
Security for sure, yeah.
What was your comment,
But there's
Sue?
no better cost expense than our election.
Excuse me for a second.
Sue, what was your comment?
Hello? Hi.
Okay. Speak up if you want.
Sure does.
Um,
Well, Sue doesn't have the benefit of all this written.
Yeah.
That's
so-
true.
of these,
She has this.
She has this.
and I emailed this out.
Oh, okay, that's right.
That's
you did.
true.
Okay,
Yeah.
excuse me.
And I emailed her the agenda, but,
But that's a good comment and a good change,
Yeah.
Petey, because now we've just left it a little bit more open. There's other options than just having one observer per table, so thank you for pointing that one out.
And then, on page 6, the brief questions may be asked. And I think when we discussed that, we talked about, well,
Where's that on the page?
on page 6, it's the 4th bullet point from the bottom.
Okay.
We talked about the fact that, well, if the person got to asking too many questions, that the municipal clerk would step in. Okay, the municipal clerk isn't there. And who makes the decision that they're asking too many questions? Based on what we experienced last year, they really, they can get in your hair with these questions. And we're trying to get a job done. So the fact that, personally, I'd like to see that whole thing taken out about questions to us, that if they have questions, then they address them to you.
So here is one option for this. It could be, sometimes the way things are set up makes a difference. So what if it said questions? So the sentence started, the bullet started with the questions. And it said questions are to be directed to the municipal clerk. Interruptions to the commission members must be minimal. And then if it said brief questions may be asked of the election commission members, maybe through the chair, regarding information in the computer system or on the ballot envelope. So I'm trying to, do you see what I'm trying to do? We're trying to start it out, questions go to the clerk, all right? Because really, Amanda is the one that's gonna answer these questions regarding Browns. When they ask questions about Browns, she has to answer those questions, right? So we'll start it out, questions go to the clerk. Interruptions must be kept to a minimum. Or, but just a routine question like, what time are you gonna get started today?
Yeah.
Maybe those brief questions may be directed to the election commission chair. What time, how long are you gonna be gone for lunch or something like that? So I think you want them to be able to ask some questions, and then.
What was that name again? Oh, Smith. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
They're not saying absolutely no questions.
But if you flip it around that way, I think that that'll help get to where you want. And if we have them through the chair of the election commission, that could help.
I know what you're addressing. Last year, we had a lot of chatter, and it was very distracting, and you're right. But, and I think Barbara has a good idea there. Because remember, I stepped in at one point and said, okay, what is it that you want? What is it that you're willing to do? And then it seemed to work fine. But there, if we don't do that,
This is the first sentence.
there's that irritation that builds up.
That's, and that when I say that I find it disruptive, that's the thing, that irritation builds up, and that, in my mind, that's what becomes disruptive for me. I'm not thinking straight.
I was going to say, not just disruptive, but it interferes with our ability to concentrate on whether this.
Yeah, Sue has something to
Sue?
say.
Of the election commission.
Sue?
Another thing I found, this is Sue, another thing I found from last year is that when you do break your attention and you concentrate on the observer, allow them to make their comment, it encourages them becoming part of the commission. They want to tell you where to go in BREMS, what to do, especially if they've worked with the state before and have used the system. And they start making the suggestions, and all of a sudden you have this assistant sitting by your side. It isn't simply an observer.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that would be an important opportunity for the chair to step in and say, we're allowing brief questions, and we'd appreciate it if you'd keep it to that, and we don't
Well,
need additional comments.
essentially, though, the chair is just a working member of the commission where we're right down to the nitty and the gritty and trying to get the deadline met.
And
And
how-
it's going to break her attention span or his attention span also.
And that's something that we've already talked about a little bit this year. If the commission needs extra work, and that's part of some of those code changes we've worked on, the clerk's office is happy to help you have extra grunt workers, and then the chair has the opportunity to more manage the situation, and they're not in the middle of the grunt work, but they're, directing the questions away, and then it changes a little bit the role that the chair is currently taking, but it kind of allows you to have that blend of those short question asked, but not to get too far away with what I'm hearing has happened in the past.
And I really like Barbara's suggestion about going through the chair, because I think there needs to be some sort of order. And I don't think what we're trying to do is limit the public from asking questions or the observers. We don't want to do that. That's not, what the role is. But to have them go through the chair provides that order that you were talking about. And then the chair can direct that. So that, if they've got a question about one that you're working on, they're not going to run over to you and sit next to you and, kind of do what Sue was saying. So they're going to go to the chair and they're going to say, here's my issue, and then the chair is the one that would go around and talk to you and get whatever is needed and get back, whereas that person would not be coming over, standing over your shoulder for 10 minutes. So I like the idea of having to go through the chair.
To play devil's advocate, I think that the notion of the brief questions was, sort of the example I was giving, let's say you're looking at an envelope, and the observer's trying to look at the envelope, and they ask you, well, is that 123 Main Street? With your amendment, your response would be, well, you need to go ask the chair. And so this was designed to allow a little bit of that help by answering a quick question, but not getting into more difficult.
The only thing is,
Questions.
where's the boundary?
I know.
So,
You're
You know,
right.
how about
perhaps
if
the
you
chair
write-
needs to
how
pay
about
more
if you
attention to
write
that.
brief clarifying questions, maybe asked of the election commission.
That's still, well,
I'm-
I don't want to beat a dead
I'm
horse, but
trying
that's
to get
still,
there.
that's still very subject to interpretation based on what we experienced last year.
And let's talk about it. I think Sue did a good job of describing what was happening.
She did.
And I think we all know that, we know who she's talking about. And, we have to do a better job of addressing that. We need to say, you may not speak, you need to leave, you need to be quiet, you cannot tell people what to do. We may have to, and that may have been due to lack of experience on all of our part, never having had observers before. And maybe this is good, so that we can say, I'm sorry, you've gone too far. Directing me what to do in REMS is not a brief clarifying question, and you need to be quiet because you are doing more than minimal interruptions of the commission. And we did talk to the observers. We did try, and I think they got a little better, and then they got worse again and got a little better. So, we can work on that.
Can I make a suggestion?
We have audience participation later on. If
Just
you could-
wording. Just wording on this.
I will make an exception. What do you
I was
suggest?
just gonna suggest, as long as the questions do not disrupt the work of the election commission.
Okay, that, I believe, I guess maybe that's not in there. It's in there someplace else. Thank you.
Would stanchions help,
I
Don't
sure
come
think so.
across this line?
I sure would feel better with that.
It's the blend of the access to the information without the bothering of the commission. And I think that it is a tightrope that we walk. And it's a conversation, we have every day with the assembly and with the clerk's office is how do you have a transparent, open government? Like, how do you allow people to have access to this information without, stopping the flow of.
But we can look into that. I know that we did have stanchions before, and we can look into what that might cost. So we'll look into it.
And I think when we did that hand recount, that would have been pretty tough to have that extra equipment in that room. You got 2 election officials and 2 observers.
Oh, yeah,
All
for
of
that.
the ballots. They
Yeah.
flip
Oh,
over.
yeah,
Oh, wait,
that's-
no, that one's for so-and-so.
Yeah.
Well, the hand recount really
It's a
didn't
different-
involve us.
It's a different process.
No, I understand, but I'm thinking in terms of these guidelines, so
Which-
keeping in mind not only what you might do in the smaller rooms, but also in something, a space like that.
That was an issue I had. However, I would like clarification at the moment. We have 4 minutes to 3, which was the end of our meeting. Obviously, we're not going to get through all of this in 4 minutes. So what are our options at this point?
You can continue, you don't have to conclude at 3.
Okay.
I can stay.
Amanda, Barbara, can you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and
I can stay.
I can.
I can stay.
Alrighty. Alrighty. Were you
I'm
finished with yours? Okay, Joyce, you want to go to yours?
Well, you've covered quite a few of them. I did make a suggestion under the conduct section, which we were just on, that
Page what?
on page 6, that I was concerned, which we were all concerned about, with the observers looking at the confidential information. And there is really no guideline in here as to when they would be able to look at REM. And so my suggestion would be that they would only be able to review the information, and I called it the voter registration system, but when they challenge a question or absentee voter's right to vote, not like you said, standing over our shoulders and things like that, but that's when they would look in that system, and not at any other time, because I don't see any other reason why they need to. But maybe I'm missing something. So that was a suggestion.
Well, I know last year, one of the gentlemen where they were writing down numbers, and I don't, I still don't know what they were writing down. Do you?
I would assume it's the voter number because they have access to the voter registration information. And their goal, they were trying to verify voters that were potentially being counted or not counted, so I don't think that they had nefarious purposes in writing down the
I'm not
numbers.
assuming that either, but I'm
So-
just saying we are setting in policy.
Yeah.
So,
And
Okay, well, that was one of my suggestions. I don't know if that's a possibility or not. Also, I know that there was a confidentiality agreement form that was signed, you said, last year, but I didn't see it in the handout, and I really thought it should be in there.
a
So-
copy of it?
Yes, just like we have a copy in here of the
Challenge.
of the challenge. And so I don't know exactly what was on the form, but I'll jump ahead to the challenge form. There is really no signature on there of the person, of the challenger, and I was gonna recommend that. So if there is a confidentiality agreement, I don't know if the if there's a signature from, from the person, I would assume, and then from the clerk's office, but I think both you and the person who's being the observer should receive a copy of the form as well, so they have it with them, not just sign it and say, okay, I read it, but they'll have it in front of them to know what they are. And then I don't know if there was any penalty information listed on there, and I feel that that's important for them to know what the misuse of information
Sure.
is. So if it's not on that form, that is a recommendation that I
The
would make.
confidentiality agreement is
Great.
identified in terms of language in the
Okay.
new code,
Okay,
and it'll have a signature line for it
okay.
in the actual form itself.
Reference.
And you're on what page?
This is,
Page
well,
18?
I don't know if I have the right
Oh,
last version
okay.
here, but it would be,
Close to that
start
page.
at page 18, it's 28,5300.
Right, okay.
So that's there. I didn't put it in here because my thought was this is something that the poll watchers or the observers would have with them.
Mhm.
They don't need that extra page of a form if they've already filled out and signed and turned in.
Okay,
Right, so they have this as a reference, and then, oh my gosh, I need to use my ballot challenge form. They can do that right there.
okay. I don't
So-
see anything in this observers thing then stating what the penalties are for the misuse, if that's, if,
We could
that
add
make-
that to the form, we could add that to the oath form.
okay,
But I don't need to put it in here, I just need to add it to the form itself.
okay, all
It's
right.
already in code.
And if it's not on the form, I guess I'm making that recommendation because I
Yeah,
didn't have the form
we
in
can do
front
that.
of me.
We can do
So,
that.
okay. I feel it's important for someone to not just say, I understand there are confidentiality provisions, but what the consequences are. if they
Kind of like
don't.
the subject to perjury.
Yes,
but-
exactly,
Yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
So Dennis, do you have the confidentiality form that we used last year, or do you need?
I think between us,
Dennis
we
had
have it.
sent it to us.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay,
think
good.
yes, yeah.
Okay, great. So
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
if you
we can
didn't have
spruce
it.
that
we
up.
could-
Okay.
May I ask a question about the form, just real quick? What's sequence number, district number and
Yeah,
sequence number?
that's some edits that I have too. That's stuff we don't use.
That's,
Oh, okay.
that's secret stuff, I wasn't.
Ah, I knew
Yeah, I
there
was-
was
I was
something
getting to
missing.
that.
Probably, it's probably a holdover.
Page
That's
8.
page 8.
So I'm guessing we would
Oh.
have a precinct
Yeah.
number?
Yeah, I added that, and that was my suggestion, to
You
say
have a
precinct
precinct
number.
number?
Okay.
And if, I would say if applicable, because it's not always needed. You said it's only needed if, whatever I put in my notes here, I can't remember, only needed for certain ones.
Oh, out of precinct voting? Out of district voting?
Let's see, that's on page 8.
Oh.
It says for question ballots, both the district and precinct number is required, is what it said in the handbook.
We don't use this, assembly district. I
Yeah,
guess
assembly
that's what I'm lost on.
Yeah,
So it should probably say assembly district number.
not district, instead of precinct
Yeah.
number, it should say assembly district,
Yeah, no,
okay.
precinct number instead of sequence?
Yes.
Right.
I think that's a good idea. We may not, if applicable,
Yeah.
Okay.
it might not be relevant.
Yeah.
but-
Okay.
So we
Also,
will-
my other comment was, is there's really no signature on here for the, signature of the
There's,
challenger.
yeah, right there. see?
Oh, thank you. I knew it, no. Okay, let's see what else I had.
So just to explain that real quick, what they would do is the name of challenger would be their group or their candidate, right? And then the representative would sign off. So you can put the Sullivan challenges together if you want to do, if that was like last year.
Okay. Great.
And these ones will all have like ballot envelope type and question or absentee ballots, envelope information, right?
And is the name of the form gonna change to
Oh,
maybe?
The name of the form, all of it.
Would be
have to
voter
change.
challenge form, or
Yes.
voter eligibility challenge
Yeah,
form?
yeah,
Because you
yeah.
used the
Yeah, that's a
eligibility
good-
before,
that's
we'll
really
use
good.
the same term. Okay. Okay, most of mine had to do with the word question and absentee, so I'm going to not talk about that. But on page 4, okay, Under the organization or organized group, it says that the group must first obtain authorization from the municipal clerk. And the other one says that they must establish with the municipal clerk. So is it authorization or establish? I'm just trying to make consistent terms.
Oh, in the first sentence it says establish, and the
Right.
second sentence it
Oh.
says authorization.
Yeah, we can fix that.
Yeah.
We're getting picky, but we are.
Well, that's a
We can
good
blame
thing.
that- We can blame that on the states.
So to me, there's a little bit difference if you say, when it says authorize versus, just establish. I'm not sure.
You know, there is a little bit of difference, and Dennis and I did discover this last year, so with the write-in campaign that happened last year, the write-in campaign actually hired an attorney, but I was getting inundated with the emails from people who were purportedly representing that campaign that were demanding information about how the recount was gonna happen, whether there was gonna be a hand count. But the person was also represented by an attorney, and so I was getting letters from the attorney, and so I just went to Dennis, it's like, I don't have enough time in the day to answer all these emails, and he said, only one person from that candidate, can contact you. And that's what this means, is I just can't answer everyone that wants to know what's going on with that candidate.
Mhm.
So, what we do here in the candidate section, the candidate establishes a contact person with the clerk's office, which is just really say,
Designates it.
Right.
gives the clerk the name and contact information. And then we're going to probably delete this middle one like we did in the other section about political parties and groups.
Yeah.
Delete that. And then when you get down to organization or group, what happens there is they need to obtain permission or authorization and then establish the contact person. So when they obtain authorization from the municipal clerk's office, what I anticipate is they're going to have to identify themselves as a group, and she's going to have to say, okay, that sounds like a group. And so, yes, I'll give that group permission. And who's your contact person?
That makes sense to
Okay,
me.
all right. That makes sense then.
Can someone who has an issue question?
Yes.
This sounds like it's just for initiative, referendum, or recall. So if you have an issue question, can they
Well,
have
I
an
think-
observer group?
I think we assume that issue covers initiative, referendum, or recall. There's no other. Well, that's not really true because you
Yeah,
could have a
so
ballot
like-
prop.
Supported a bond or.
You
Yeah.
could have a bond. You could have a
Mhm.
proposition. Probably what I need to put proposition in there. Yeah, I need to put proposition in there.
Just so we don't want to restrict them if they. Be too fussy.
And Dennis, you'll do the same thing on the
Okay.
next page.
Yeah, I will. Okay.
Okay, then my other question was on page 7, where it says right under where we're changing it to say voter eligibility challenges. It
Mhm.
says the municipal law allows observers to challenge the name. Well, they can be challenging more than the name.
Yeah.
They can be challenging the address,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
identifiers, the whatever.
This is the state's language, and I read it to mean all of those things. But we can challenge it, we can just change name to eligibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that better,
that's good.
because when I
Yeah.
read that, I thought it's just not the name, it's a whole variety of
Right.
things.
I agree with you. Okay.
Okay, let me see if I had anything else. No, I think you took care of all of them by taking and changing the word ballot to whatever we're putting in there for that word, because that was
And in-
very misleading.
And in those bullets, we want to say the assembly district, the same one right there, so it'll say the assembly district.
Under ballot challenges?
Yes.
Yes.
It's third line,
Instead of
fourth
which one, the
line.
district number, we'd say
Oh,
the
yeah.
assembly
Yep.
district? Okay. And then we're taking the word ballot out on response to ballot challenges, just response to challenges? Okay, so you've got
Yeah.
that circled already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Challenges we share with others.
I think that was, pretty much it. You answered my question about policy versus procedure and regulations.
Yeah, I have the same question all the time from the various different departments. They get panicked when I say, well, those things need to be a regulation, but they're just policies. I said, well, there's a difference. There's the policies you use to operate internally. Those don't need to be approved by the assembly through this formal process. And then you have policies that you apply to people externally, your voters, your observers, your watchers. And you're imposing upon people externally rules that can be adopted through the formal process.
Okay, I would like to just go back to the one thing, and I want to make sure I have it right on page 6, where we talked about, so many things I can't recall. On the fifth one down, where we're going to start out with saying,
Brief clarifying?
we're going to start by saying, are we going to start by saying
Yeah,
other
can I
questions
read
are,
it to you?
yes.
Yes.
Is that okay? Questions are to be directed to the municipal clerk. Interruptions to the commission members must be minimal. Brief clarifying questions may be asked of the election commission members regarding information in the computer system or on the ballot envelope.
Are we saying anything about questions going through the chair?
Yeah, were we gonna add that?
You could,
If you want me to, you can do that.
you could say it is recommended that, if possible, questions should be directed through the chair of the election commission. And I think if we change the role of the chair to the way Amanda was describing it, that if we have a few more workers and we can move the chair into more of a supervisory role where or a watcher type of a role, I think that would just make this happen automatically.
I can see that.
I agree.
Does she get a scepter?
Is she gonna what?
Scepter.
Oh, scepter.
Gavel.
Overseer.
Or a Wonder Woman
Overseer.
outfit or something.
I think though that a bigger room can solve a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
Well, my thought on this is that, again, I'm not really anticipating a lot of attention to this when you're in your smaller rooms. So unless you know you have space that you want to move into, it might be one of those things where if it arises, you figure out, okay, you have a contingency in mind, you don't necessarily move yourself until you actually know it's necessary.
I agree.
And maybe in between now and then, you do come up with some technological adjustment.
My point would be to the clerk, if she needs people to talk to the assembly members and, try to explain the necessity for more room, we'd be happy to do so.
I think we're gonna have to talk about it. Part of the discussion, I think you've heard this, that Amanda's goals have been to increase voter turnout. There's been a proposal from Mr. Burge to change the date of the election to increase voter turnout. If voter turnout increases, which I think it's either gonna do it under Mr. Burge's proposal or under Amanda's proposal, we wanna increase voter turnout. So if that happens, there's more question and absentee ballots, there's gonna be more work,
Automatically.
it's likely that we're gonna need more space. There is limited space. I think, you've been around the city, you've gotten bumped from room to room, you can tell that, there's not a lot of space in City Hall, and I'm sure your office is suffering. So unless you could talk Dennis into giving us some of the,
I'm on 3 floors now.
Oh, are you really? I thought you were, which floors?
Well, I have prosecution on your
2?
floor, and then I'm on 7, and I have a couple people upstairs on the 8th floor.
Wow. So
Well-
it's a struggle.
Well, I just want to say too, in my job in Minneapolis, when I was director of elections, we never had space. So I know exactly what you're
Oh,
dealing
dear.
with. Well, you don't have space because you only need it at a certain time of the year, so they don't want to designate that space permanently for you because then it sits empty the rest of the year. So we would scramble every time. So I know
I
exactly
always
what you're talking
feel like
about.
a glorified mover because we move all the furniture out of 155 and then we move all the furniture out of, I spend 3 months moving furniture around City Hall.
Ideally, it would be,
And then they're
It all
done.
back again.
if it was possible, use some of those smaller conference rooms in the hangar.
Would work.
If you could manage the security part of it, and you've got cameras and security systems.
You just put it in your budget and you hire,
And then you just take one of those rooms for
Yeah.
2 months or whatever it is.
But we'd never be able to leave the ballots, any of the envelopes over there. They come back over here and are locked, and we're the only ones that have.
And even when they're in the ombudsman's conference room, the ballots get moved.
we've done it
Okay.
before,
Yeah.
Barbara.
Yeah.
In Egan Center, we would have security and we'd have locked security.
So did you hire a security guard? Well, that might be a good way to go then.
I don't
is
mean to be,
hire- No,
pushy here, but
that-
I just wanna tell you.
But what I'm thinking about is like leaving the ballots over there.
No, but you get a secure,
Hire a security guard.
They have a great camera system. too, for security.
Okay.
we need more money for hair appointments.
See, I realize if I could, I have one more question, and it's on page 3. On the second bullet point. So it's saying that, and I don't know, the designated election officials, that means us too, I understand.
Yes.
Okay. Shall review each ballot envelope and determine whether the voter is qualified to vote in the election and whether the ballot has been properly cast. Those are really 2 separate functions.
Yes.
And so I think they should be divided, because we're not really, whether the ballot for that qualified voter is properly cast, because we're not supposed to be able to know which ballot goes with which voter. Do you see what I'm saying? So those two look like they go together, like we're gonna qualify the voter to vote in the election and then whether that ballot is properly cast. I mean, I'm being picky again, but I think we should separate those 2 sentences. And is that something that we as the election commission are doing?
Establish guidelines, what are those?
I mean, so, and if the ballot has been properly cast, the designated election officials will determine the count of the ballot as a full count ballot or as a partial count ballot based upon the established guidelines.
That's
Right,
what we
so-
did last
Yeah.
year with the
Yeah.
area-wide
Yeah.
voters.
That,
You
some
mean
of
when
that
we
is
had the big meeting?
stuff that I
When
wanted to
people were out
address
of,
too.
were out of district,
Okay,
that's right, so you could, full count ballot, you count all the races. Partially, you say, well, you weren't
Right.
eligible to vote that assembly race, but you can certainly vote on the area-wide bond props and things like that.
right.
The first one on, and whether the ballot's been properly cast, my sense was that was, what I was thinking there was that, improperly marked ballots would fit in there.
Right.
So, did they fully fill in the oval, that kind of stuff?
Right.
So you
And-
got voter eligibility, did they properly cast the vote or all the votes on that ballot, and then at the end, whether some of those things need to come off because they weren't eligible for those races, but we can separate them.
I still feel pretty adamant about separating them, because if I were to read that, that's what I would think. I would think that I'm approving your ballot out of your envelope.
Okay.
And it just doesn't, I don't know, I'm sorry I'm being picky again, but I suggested that maybe we just say the designated election official shall review each ballot envelope and determine whether the voter is qualified to vote in the election, period.
Yeah.
And then we could say, the designated election official shall determine whether the ballot has been properly cast. Whether ballots have been properly cast, or the ballot.
What does that really mean, properly cast?
Meaning that they didn't vote twice for the same two different, the candidate, or,
So in a hand count, or recount by hand, where the active vote machine didn't count it, you had some overvotes or mismarks and things like that.
right.
Has this
They didn't fill the oval, they circled
Yeah,
it,
I understand.
so
I'm
that
just
the
trying
machine
to-
didn't read it because it wasn't filled
Yeah.
in.
What are we gonna do if they change the election?
How do you mean?
AccuVote
That's for another
units.
day.
That was my
Um,
only other comment that I hadn't checked off.
You
Okay.
can do that.
Well, my comments begin on page 3 as well. So, again, we have in there the designated election officials. Let's see. Yeah, several of these processes we have not actually done. It's been the clerk's office or other designated election officials have done them. But are you wanting to move our procedures over to be more closely observing that, Amanda?
Can you tell me specifically which
Okay,
one you're referring to?
Let's see. Well, that one that we just discussed, designating whether it has been properly cast. Some of those things never get to us other than in the tally sheet kind of stuff at the end.
So, my purpose in this page was, and this was born out of the minute in the state guide, was sort of a one-page overview, right? To
Okay.
the observers as to what you guys.
Okay, it says
what you
election
guys-
commission at the top of the page.
I understand. I
Yeah.
understand. But that doesn't mean everything in here is purely the
Done by
function
us.
of the election commission.
Okay, that was my question.
Because there's so much
So many
happening
things.
all over. I mean, you know, the by mail board is working, you know, Amanda and I are working up here. And so it's, what the election commission is doing is just one step in the process, or a bunch of big steps in the process.
That greatly relieves me. But like I said, with the election commission at the head of that page, it made me wonder if we were responsible for, you know, all that stuff. Let's see. Okay, page 9. We'll begin reviewing the tallies of recorded vote to check for mathematical error. Where is that on the page? Do you know?
Very top. First one.
And comparing the totals to the district results upon completion of the canvass. We have done the tally. We've helped in preparing the tally, but we haven't. I just wonder if that's new, or if that's expressly ours, or is there a change there than what we've done in the past?
I think you're gonna have to wait until Amanda comes back.
Okay.
I agree with you, there could be a period after mathematical error. And I don't know what the rest of that,
Okay,
is that?
let's see. Yeah,
is
well,
that
let's go to
the
page 9
districts,
because.
Or is that really, we do it by precinct,
Okay,
I
that's-
believe.
yeah.
Perhaps you could address my next question on page 9. It's the in addition to review of the absentee and question voting materials, the election commission may conduct a hand count verification of ballots if requested to do so by the municipal clerk. And I know we kind of talked that back and forth last year, but you were the one that organized and executed, and by the way, that was an outstanding way to do it. I thought it was wonderful. But do you want us doing that? But you have to be there anyway, deciding that counts,
It's
that
a-
doesn't.
It's a May,
Okay,
and so
depending on what it looks like.
it is, it's just, everybody is an election official and everybody's taken that oath. And so it's just an option for bodies.
Okay,
So, that's, I think, what it's doing right here.
okay, so May is the key word there.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, on page 10, this code is used when it's determined that the ballot was not properly witnessed for by mail and fax ballots, an authorized official or two persons over the age of 18 must witness the voter's signature. And I couldn't remember, but I thought there was only one witness that was required for that. Because I remember having my husband sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I checked it, I think you're right. What did I don't know, man, if I emailed that to you or not.
Yeah, we looked at the envelope and determined it was one.
It's one.
Yeah, so. you
Because
changed.
two people is much more difficult to get when you're running out the door. Your husband can sign, but, so that, we're changing back to one?
Yeah.
Okay. Amanda, let's go back to page 9. And this was the one you were suggesting that I ask her, right, Barbara?
Yes.
The Election Commission will begin reviewing the tallies of the recorded vote to check for mathematical error and comparing the totals to the district results upon completion of the canvass. The Election Commission will continue until review of all the districts has been completed. Is that a new procedure? for us, for the
Or
election
should
commission.
district be precinct?
Yeah, district should be precinct, and I think that this is what you do anyways when you go through
Okay.
and verify. We have 9 voters that sign the question ballot register log, and we have 9 ballots
Okay.
in District 105, and then you do that anyways, and you go through all
Okay.
the districts.
I was just wondering if this was different, and we are still included in the validating of the question ballots and those kinds of stuff, maybe with added help.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
okay, that's great.
So I think if district changes to precinct, then
Yeah.
that's correct.
Okay. Page 11. The code where it says no official signature. No, excuse me. Page 11. Okay, it goes from page 10 to page 11. And it's talking about voter incomplete notary. This code is used when the notary public witnessing the ballot envelope failed to execute the notarization properly. That sounds real similar to me to no official signature, which we kicked out last year because the voter didn't have responsibility for the,
We're still trying to kick out, I guess.
Yes.
It hasn't passed yet.
Oh, really?
But
So,
it's different, because remember, the election official is signing the early and absentee and the question ballots at the polling place. So this is gonna be a different one where you've got a notary.
like a fax or something, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure on our end if we use notaries. I think it's,
On any of the,
yeah.
so for example, you could use a notary if it was,
You did.
where we've had like a voter overseas, wouldn't that general power of an attorney, that would have a notary on it?
We
Power of attorney would
determined,
have a notary on it.
So if the power of attorney,
that power of attorney can't vote for somebody.
right,
They
but
can't, but they
can
could
do some
notarize.
things. They can do some things, like they can request a ballot, they can't vote for them, they can't sign a petition. But if the notary, in that case, completed the notarization of
Yeah.
that would be when this would
Do you do
apply.
a notary on a special needs
No.
application?
So
But
this
it
is
may-
kind of obscure then,
well,
a little,
it may be-
a little.
To the extent that I copy these over from the state's code, if you don't use it, you don't use it.
Yeah.
If you have a number 1 code that you use, it's something different. Or you just use the state's codes, and if this is just one that exists, you just don't use it.
Yeah. That's
Okay. So it's okay to have it there if we don't use it? Okay. Page 11 on number 4, no identification provided at the time of the voting. Is that something we do? And how is it different from G?
So there are some people in the voter registration book who are required to show ID at the polls when they vote, and it's because when they registered to vote, they didn't show ID, so they have not been verified
Okay.
by a registrar. They have the opportunity to be verified at the polling place, and then, but if they still don't, then it's still not a verified voter.
Okay.
What does
So-
the A mean? It says A/ID.
I don't know.
Where's that?
The second line.
Oh,
I can call the state and ask that question.
So this is the state thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is,
okay.
I mean, do you remember that? Because A is.
I don't
accept
think
the
we've
whole
ever done
ballot.
that, but I
Yeah.
remember that at the precinct itself, that's
Yeah.
sometimes a question, so. Okay.
Yeah, I gotcha. The last sentence in that sheet, on that page.
Well,
This
you
one?
know, it's
G.
possible that could mean absentee, because it's talking
G.
about,
Right here.
you know,
that was my thought.
absentee ID because the voter is voting by mail or fax ballot and does not submit the required identification with the ballot. Means the voter initially registered to vote by mail, and the voter's identity could not be identified. Okay, thanks,
And
Michelle.
you're- What are you reading from?
This under number 4, yes.
Yeah.
I'm
And
sorry.
I think you're right.
I think
Joyce.
Yeah.
that was my thought too. I
I
just
think
didn't
that's-
wanna say.
Yeah,
it.
well, I don't know, but I mean,
So
that's what it
just
appears to
clarify,
be,
yeah.
so.
I'll figure it out. somehow.
Okay, so that's, other than
Like I
just
said,
checking on the AID, that's
No
clear.
identification.
Okay, and you've addressed the codes, which I think I passed on to you. Is that all the discussion that we have? Sue, did you have any more questions?
I did one about the codes, since we're on that. Are these codes taken from the state manual? They're just so different from what we've been using.
Yeah, you may not have been online yet when we were talking about that, but Amanda was saying that, like a couple weeks after the election, she goes to the state and they record this stuff and discuss this, and it's quite difficult using two different sets of codes. And
Okay.
so we're trying to stream like that and make it more accurate, and so we are adapting these codes with a big chart on the wall so that we can learn them.
In the clerk's
Okay,
office.
so these are in line with the state codes.
Yes. And I would definitely change the 1, 2, 3, 4. However, that's not my option. So, okay. Is there any more discussion?
Do the election commission need to take?
It would be, if they're ready, if the commission's ready, it would be nice to have a vote to
A motion.
adopt the Observer's Handbook,
So a motion.
subject to the amendments that we've discussed,
So the motion would be to adopt.
or recommend its approval by the Assembly. I guess it'd probably be a better way to do that.
So did you hear that, Sue?
I did not. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
So we are, it looks like our step now is to recommend approval. We'll need to take a vote to recommend approval to the Assembly with this document.
With the changes suggested today?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll be yay.
Does somebody want to move that?
So also move that. Do you want to read it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It wasn't the point of making the motion. I
Okay.
get lost here on the other end.
Yes, I bet.
But you can be the second if you want.
I move. Okay.
Are you a second, Sue, then?
Sue, you're seconding it? Seconding?
I am texting it, right.
Madam Chair, may I ask when we will see a final version?
Yes.
Yes.
Probably
Well,
tomorrow before the.
Tomorrow.
immediately.
Oh, are you trying to do this by
By
tomorrow's
the-
meeting?
well,
Yes.
the main code is up for Assembly public hearing tomorrow. There's a possibility that they could get so far as to approve it tomorrow night if they get through the public hearing.
So is that physically possible?
My fingers will fly tonight.
Oh,
Yay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
But we really do appreciate being able to read it.
Yeah, not a problem.
Because we'll have to think of 6 more things we thought about.
Can I,
So, do we need a vote?
yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Motion
objections?
passes. Any objections?
So.
Okay, I have a question about what's going on tomorrow night then, and where it is. I have not had a chance to look at the agenda. So where is it on the
So I
agenda?
think it's pretty early on the
Yeah,
agenda.
It's a 13 item.
Oh, it
Under
is.
old business?
Yeah.
Or continued public hearing, sorry.
Continue.
Which is nice, because then it comes
That's
before
right.
all the other public hearings.
Yes.
Okay, is it recommended that the chair or any members be at the meeting
The
tomorrow?
election commission is invited to attend, and there is a couple election issues before the body, so
Other ones too.
if you would be interested.
Keep track of them.
You're not, certainly
Not
not
required.
required to attend, but we appreciate your support and your hard work.
You
And I
can
think
also
you-
watch on TV too.
Okay.
Yeah.
From the
But at
comfort
least
of
for
your
this
couch.
particular issue, it would be nice if there was somebody there.
In case they have a question.
What time do you expect?
They
After
can.
6 and before
Yeah, he can.
11.
So 6 o'clock would be recommended.
Yeah, I anticipate that they'll get to it
Right.
pretty quickly,
Yeah, right.
and then you.
So you're
Then
going to
you
be
can
there,
go.
Sue?
Yes, I am.
Then you can go and watch the rest of it at home.
Okay.
So, We have.
When you're going to be there then?
Yes, I will be there.
Well, I will as well, because I just work downtown and play, so this is at the library anyway.
It is.
I will be there tomorrow.
And I will do my best to email this out as soon as possible, so if you have the opportunity to look at it, I always appreciate more eyes. And do you have like a group email for them?
Is there any other member comments? And audience, did you have any comments?
I do.
I'm sorry, Chairman. I have one issue I wish to bring up about hand counts during the election, the night of the election, for verification. And it's something that can be put off for a much later date, but I just want to alert people to that.
And the state has some sort of a random,
Yeah, we used to too.
oh, an audit, yeah.
And that's something that the clerk's office has talked about and would like to move forward with, and it's just, who we have involved with that, how we determine which, I think there's just a series of sort of logistic questions that we need to address on
Right.
our end, but it is something that we feel strongly about, we would like to move forward with. I think that we could probably report back, if not at the January organizational meeting, which we should probably discuss before the end of the agenda too. We could get to by February or March.
Because when the Data Processing Review Board always did that, when I worked in that capacity.
Yeah, I actually had a robust conversation about that this weekend, so I haven't talked to Barbara about it yet, so I have to run it by her. But I think we could probably report back either at the January organizational meeting or by February or March.
Okay. Do we want to set a date for our organizational meeting?
I think that we should use this time to do that, and that way the clerk's office can publicly notice it and so.
Okay. Calendars? I think, Joyce, you had some commitments you wanted to. What about the last week of January? Is that open?
Yes, and just so you
Is
know.
this just one meeting?
This is the one meeting where you nominate your chair. I'll pass out your binders. So,
We'll get your IDs again.
yeah.
If you don't, I think we have the IDs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll pass those out.
Well, I had mentioned to Gwen that the last week would be the best for me. I am going to be in Juneau next week for several days at the end of the week as well as the following week. So it puts it kind of difficult if I can't be here.
Well, the following week would be the last week of
Right,
January.
right. So that's the week that would be best for me.
And just
The
so you
week
know,
of
on
the
the
27th.
clerk's office end, filing for office opens the 24th. And it would be nice if we could do it before then, just because we are going to be ramping up a lot.
What is
once
the 24th?
that
It's a Friday.
happens.
That's Friday.
So
That
you'd be
this
in
week
Juneau that-
before.
Yeah.
So, if it's possible to do it between those.
Between now and the 24th.
Joyce just said she wouldn't be here, right?
Well, I'll be gone Thursday and Friday next week, and then I'll be gone Wednesday, Thursday, Friday the following week. So
Oh, okay.
if we wanted to do it next week on
Yeah.
Wednesday.
The 22nd.
What about the
No, the
Monday,
fifth-
Tuesday
the fifth.
on the next week? Is
Oh,
that
I'm
gonna be-
sorry. It's this week. I'm already looking at that we're still in last week. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This week I will be in Juneau on Thursday and Friday.
Oh, okay.
Next week it will be Wednesday, Thursday,
Can I
and
overlook
Friday.
there?
So we could
have
do the
mine.
21st.
We could do the 21st.
That would,
That's a which day?
A Tuesday.
Okay.
Is that an assembly day?
Yes.
No.
No, it's not. That's because the one would have been on the 14th.
At what time?
I have something at noon that day, so we could do in the morning or in the afternoon.
I guess I would prefer the morning because I do leave that night for
Yeah.
Juneau.
Mornings are always best for me as well.
Okay. 9 a.m.,
Okay.
Okay.
does that work?
Okay.
Sue, we're scheduling the meeting for, looks like for the 21st, on Tuesday, the 21st at 9 a.m.
Tuesday, 21st of January.
Yes, at 9 a.m.
And I'll send out a calendar notice. It's my mom. My mom's birthday is the 21st.
Oh.
Okay, we still need to.
So, I guess are we on number 8 on the agenda?
We are on
7?
number 6 for right now.
Oh.
Mr.
Fine.
Haberman, you had a comment, would you?
Yes, I have a couple questions. Number one is, when did the commissioners receive a copy of today's agenda?
Today, when we came.
Today, so you haven't seen it before?
No.
For today? Okay. Okay, and then who prepared the agenda? The clerks, who in the clerk's office prepared the agenda of?
The clerk's office prepared the agenda.
Who specifically?
Irrelevant.
It's very relevant. The agenda notes 1 to 2.
Mr. Haven, you have 2.5 minutes to make your comments. They don't have to answer specific questions.
We're talking about scheduling and agenda related.
You have.
I have nothing else
Right.
to say. Thank you for continuing with the intimidation you do.
Okay.
I'm being sarcastic.
Anything else? I think we're ready to
Is there
adjourn, aren't we?
A motion to adjourn
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.